Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. Today we are going to talk about flow of communication. Before this lecture, we have already talked about process of communication and barriers of communication. Today, we are going to talk about flow of communication. What does it mean? It means we are going to understand how communication flows within organization and outside organization. But in this lecture, our focus will be only on flow of communication within organization. Communication flows within an organization in three different directions. Number one is downward communication, number two is upward communication, and number three is horizontal communication, that is also called lateral communication. So we are going to discuss them one by one in detail. First one is downward communication. First, we will understand what is downward communication in simple words. Always remember, any organization follows a chain of command. This chain of command is called hierarchy. So every organization follows a hierarchy. It means how message is generated and how it is transferred from one point or from one position to another position. In simple words, if we say when the information flows from higher levels of authority to lower levels of authority, that is called downward communication. We can have different examples of downward communication like staff meetings, manuals, procedures, policy statements, instructions, job descriptions, and announcement. These are certain different examples. If we add more to them, these are telephone conversations or performance appraisals, counseling sessions, interviews are also, or even meeting in a hall is also, or all these are examples of downward communication. In all these examples, communication flows from higher level to lower level. Now we are going to discuss what are objectives of downward communication. It means why we communicate downward, what goals we can get with the help of downward communication. If we divide them, these are four different major objectives. Number one is to explain set standards, such as informing an employee about specific job instructions or general company policies. Right? When you join a company, you will be told about different rules and regulations. So it is the responsibility of higher authority to tell you what are the standards, what are the rules going to be followed in that organization. Number two is to provide feedback to employees, such as giving a performance appraisal. You perform well, and you, after 1 month, you get employee of the month, the best employee of the company. So that is basically feedback. It is giving you appraisal that okay, you are doing well, and everyone who's going to work hard and perform well will be rewarded, will be appraised, will be given importance. On the other hand, if you don't perform well, obviously you will also be given certain notice, like a notice of clarification or cause notice, show cause notice. These are also one kind of feedback. Number three is to encourage participation, such as eliciting new ideas or upward feedback on current policies. Like you can also encourage participation, like you are going to get different ideas from your subordinates. Let's suppose you want to launch a new policy about health. So you want to get feedback from your subordinates. You have to get feedback when they say, okay, you should do this, you should omit this clause be amended like this, and then you amend those clauses and you take their feedback, and according to their feedback, what you do, you bring certain changes in the policy, so they will consider themselves as a participant of that decision. So they will own that decision, right? Fourth one is to motivate or inspire, such as showing how an employee's job fits into the big picture or the company's general mission. You can take example of an office boy. He is of the lowest cadre, but without him you cannot perform all duties. So you have to point him out that yes, you are also part of our organization. Without you, our work is impossible to be accomplished, right? So these are four different objects which we are going to follow when we communicate downward. Now we are going to talk about what problem occurs in downward communication. One of the biggest dangers in downward communication is that information may get garbled on the way, like when the message is sent from the top, from the higher authority, when it comes to one lower, one level down, it can be misunderstood to 10%. Like CEO gave certain message to managers, so managers understood that message to 90%, 10% they didn't understand. When the managers send this message to their subordinates, they understand 80% of the message, and the average goes on and goes on. It reduces as the one level goes down. So there are chances that the meaning is lost. So the main problem that occurs during downward communication is loss of meaning. Means meaning is not understood 100%ly the way you want that message to be understood. Now the question is, how can we solve this problem of loss of meaning? We have to take 4 steps. Number one is that we have to make that communication two-way. One-way communication cannot be successful. For example, you have sent an announcement to your subordinates. So what you have to do is you have to ensure that the message is read and understood by the subordinates or not. To do that, what you do, you send a, a letter of announcement, and with that you also write the names of all recipients, and you ask them to sign it when you read this announcement. It will help you to ensure that your message is understood. So it you have made communication two way. You have given a message and you have taken the feedback of that message too. All right. So in this way, you can get help. You can make communication two way. Second step is that you have to keep a balanced tone. Your tone is very crucial, very important. What you have to do is uh, that you have to keep a balanced tone. It should not be always an artificial warmth or friendship, or it should always not be insulting or personal references or inappropriate sarcasm. All right. So never insult your subordinates every time, and never praise them every time. You have to keep a balance between tone. You must know where to show a stick and where to show a carrot, because you are part of our organization. If they are not doing well, you are also responsible for this, right? Third thing is that you have to keep downward communication very clear. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that you have made a very good presentation and your message is well structured as far as vocabulary is concerned, grammar is concerned, even punctuation is concerned. No, it means that how clear you make the message in the meaning of understanding. Let's suppose I give you an assignment and I ask you, okay, write an essay on inflation in Pakistan, right? It is not a clear message. Now I say, okay, you have to write an essay on inflation in Pakistan. It should be of 450 words. You are going to type it. You are not going to write it with your pen. Your date of submission is 30th October 2020. After that, no one can submit it. You are not going to copy it from the internet. It should be your own writing. Facts and figures must be given to that. And after completing it, you are going to make one title page on which you will write your name, your class, title, and the subject. So in this way, I have made it more clear. So you can understand my intended meaning in better way, because I have tried to make it more clear how I want you to do that work. So you have to make the message clear to your respondents, to your recipients, to your subordinates, to show that how you want that action should be done. Fourth one, the last one, is that downward communication must be based on mutual trust. You have to establish a sense of trust between you or your subordinates. If you don't trust your employees, your prejudice will stand in the way of true communication with them. You have to trust them. If your employees don't trust you, they may not try to understand you. They may lose their job. Enthusiasm. They may purposely delay action. You can take example of unions, right? How unions delay works. They go on strike if you don't understand their problems, right? So these are four steps which you have to take when you are going to ensure that downward communication is successful one. Now we lead to the next communication flow, that is upward communication. It is as important as downward communication is. What is upward communication? To understand it, it's very simple. It is opposite to downward communication. When communication flows from lower levels of authority to higher levels of authority, communication is called downward communication. When subordinates are communicating to their bosses, right? So there are different examples like reports, memos, meetings, and interviews. These four are the major examples of upward communication. Now we see what are different objectives of upward communication. Number one is to report on activities or accomplishments of a person or a division. You are given a job, you are given an authority to write a report. So whatever you have done, after a week, after 15 days, after a month, you are going to report what you have done. Or you are working on a project, so you will give a progress report, how much you have accomplished and how much you have to accomplish in the next session, right? Second one is to offer suggestions or opinions. Yes, subordinates can also give different suggestions and different opinions. Third one is to increase participation in management functions such as planning or controlling. So these are three major objectives. Your boss will benefit from your ability to communicate upward. He or she will be able to make better decisions with better information. He or she can learn from past mistakes and successes with the help of your opinion and suggestions. He or she can exercise more sufficient control and plan more efficiently for the future with the help of your suggestions, your opinions, and your participations. When you participate in decision making, obviously you will own it. When you own something, obviously you do your best to make it possible to happen. Now, there is also certain problem. What problem occurs in downward communication? That problem is loss of the lack of trust. Subordinates don't trust their bosses. There are different reasons why the problem of a lack of trust occurs. There are four different point of views. Research was done on different subordinates, and they were asked why they don't um, trust their bosses. The first answer was that they don't share honest opinion with their bosses because they feel that they will get into a lot of trouble. And then some said that okay, if they show the honest opinion, the fear that their bosses might perceive them as lacking independence. Third one is another study shows that employees have fear of being penalized if they are honest. And the fourth group answered that people have belief that managers or their bosses are not really interested in their problems, so why they should give them very honest opinion. What they like, we should tell them, okay, all is well. What they want to listen, we have to tell them that. So these are four different reasons why subordinates uh, don't have confidence or don't trust on their bosses. Now, the question is, how can we solve this problem? Yes, number one is we must establish a relationship with our boss. If you have a supervisor who does not want to hear your opinions on your problems, that's one thing, but you shouldn't assume that all bosses are alike that. Have a positive thinking that no, my boss is going to listen to my problem. He will take care of my problems. Establish guidelines with your boss. Find out how much she or he wants to know and how often and under what circumstances. Mean how much you have to tell him or her, how many times you can tell him or her, and in what circumstances you have to tell your boss. You have to read your boss in what circumstances, how he or she behaves. It is just as important to manage this relationship as it is to manage your relationship with subordinates. You have to understand your boss. All right. So then second point is, one, you have established how much upward communication you and your boss want. Beware of the two common pitfalls of this kind of communication. Number one is tone, and number two is detail. Remember, you have to keep a balanced tone, and you also have to keep in mind how much detail you have to tell to your boss. Avoid one hand and impolite tone, too brisk, argumentative, or insulting. Your tone should not be insulting. It should not be very argumentative. It should not be very blunt. It should not be very impolite. And even on the other hand, it should not be very swami. It should not be very obvious, too obvious a desire to please. Never have a conversation with your boss just to please him or her. Show him or her reality, how bitter it is. But the tone decides either your boss is going to understand you or not. All right. And be sure to include the appropriate amount of detail. First tone and then detail. Consider how much detail your boss wants based on the specific assignment and on his or her personality. Everything is not to tell, not for telling to your boss. You have to decide what information you have to share with your boss and what information you are not going to share with your boss. So after discussing upward communication, now we are going to move to the third one, last one, horizontal communication, that is also called lateral communication. Yes, what is horizontal communication? Communication between people at the same hierarchical rank but in different functional areas is called horizontal or lateral communication. Like you have different departments, chemical departments, physics departments, electrical department, mechanical department. Every department is headed by an HOD, and all HODs are of equal rank, but they are under one umbrella, that is your organization. All right, but they all are equal in ranks. When HOD chemicals talks to HOD physics, it means they are communicating in one organization but of two different departments, but they are of equal ranks. No one is boss, no one is subordinate, rather they are peers, right? So this flow of communication is becoming increasingly important as business becomes more large, complex, and specialized even in simple companies. However, lateral communication is essential in order to coordinate various functions by encouraging among teamwork among peers. So, what is the major objectives of horizontal communication is to create an atmosphere where different departments can cooperate with each other, where you can help each other to achieve your combined goal. So, this horizontal communication has so many different problems. So, let's see what problems occur in horizontal communication. The first one is the problem that can occur here, that is departmental isolation. Number two is lack of time and communication opportunities. And number three is jealousy. And number four is a rivalry between groups, jealousy between groups and rivalry between groups. You don't there is plausibility that you don't have time to communicate with other department, or because of jealousy or rivalry you don't cooperate with one another. All right, so these problems are certainly surmountable. What we have to do, because there are certain objectives which we can also get. Number one, like we can coordinate tasks. Number two, we can solve problems. Number three, we can share information. Number four, we can resolve conflict. And even number five, we can increase our interpersonal rapport. These are five objectives which we can get. Even the problems are many, but there are also objectives which you can achieve in lateral communication. So, how can we solve this problem? All these problems of lack of communication, a lack of time, departmental isolation, jealousy, rivalry. Yes, number one, and the only one solution is that you have to keep flow of communication open, never cross a red line. Okay, you can have problems with one another, with each other, but never cross a red line. Always keep one window open for communication. All right, so very often young people starting their business careers neglect this form of communication, but what you have to do is that you can offer help to other department, and you can get help from that department. All right, let's suppose that you have been hired in a department that your group is designing a new set of travel expense forms. How might your ability to communicate literally help you? For one thing, you might want to discuss the forms with your peers in other departments. You must have discussion. Never take a decision of your own. Involve other experts in your decision making, right? You can get help from printing department. You can help from other experts that how can we design this form. So in this way, when you keep consulting others, when you keep talking with others, you can have a successful horizontal communication. So in this lecture, we talked about three flows of communication. Hope you have understood this lecture. Take care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.